Welcome back to WECAN. I am joined by Anne-Marie Zanzal today. Anne-Marie, welcome. You lead at WECAN and you're the coming out coach and an ordained minister. You support and coach thousands of people through coming out and sexual identity transitions and navigating the messy middle. You're also a grief counselor and a podcast host. You help people get clear, build self-trust, and find language around what they are experiencing. Talk to us about your work, first of all, Anne-Marie.
Well, first of all, Stephanie, thank you so much for having me on the podcast. I deeply appreciate it. Where do you want to begin? I started this work because I was somebody that came out later in life. So basically, I served the people that I was. And it was hard. It was really, really hard. And at that time, this is only 10 years ago.
Mm.
At that time, there were really no resources. I Googled late in life lesbian in 2016, and I found
No way.
one blog that talked
Mm.
about that. And in that blog, when I read all the way down at the bottom, they had a Facebook group. And of course, like anybody who is making a major life transition, I found out the information and then didn't contact the person till like 3 or 4 months later. And when I contacted her, I joined a Facebook group, and that Facebook group changed my life. And so, after doing that, and after coming out, and years later, I decided to help my community and help other people come out later in life too. And so, if you haven't been paying attention, you may have noticed there's a lot more women coming out later in life these
Yeah.
days. It is not like even 10 years ago when I did it, it was still sort of like, oh, that's unusual. People don't do that. But besides myself, there's also several other coaches out there that are doing this work. And the reason why so many women are coming out later in life is there's visibility now where there
Mm.
wasn't before.
Yeah.
Because what I found in the groups that I was in, a lot of times people had shame around being late in life. And I'm like, okay, let's just stop it with this shame stuff because um, because it's not helpful for you and it's not helpful for the community either.
Yeah. And shame is sort of the hardest emotion in the book of emotions, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. 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 Well, because shame is okay, so guilt is I've done something wrong. So guilt is actually a good emotion when we
Mm.
actually have done something wrong. But
Mm.
unfortunately, so many people with shame and guilt, sometimes they haven't done anything wrong and they think that it's guilt, but it's actually shame. Shame is I am wrong. There is something fundamentally wrong with me.
Mm.
And women in particular are taught to feel a lot of shame about a lot of things. For example, our bodies.
Mm.
Um, I mean, like whether we're straight or gay, we've been trained to have shame around our bodies. We've been trained to have shame wanting something more than being a wife and a mother. So there's a lot of shame women have to work through.
Anne-Marie, talk to us about the work, how you work. I mean, the thing that you do is that you understood in your life transition that
Mhm.
community was everything, right? That gave you the safe container from which you could unfold what was
Mhm.
happening to you in real time. That's what you give to other people. Plus, obviously, your guidance, etc. So talk to us if someone is listening and this resonates. How does that work?
So it is a very challenging process, and a lot of times very normal for people to try to figure it out for a year, year and a half, 2 years on their own.
Mm.
And sometimes they go to work with a therapist, and sometimes the therapist is really helpful and good, but the majority of the time, therapists don't understand later in life sexual awakening because it hasn't been taught. And it
Mm.
actually hasn't really been studied. A very good friend of mine just got her PhD in late in life awakening because she was somebody who was late in life and was very curious about why it took people so long. So when people typically follow me 1, 2, 3, 5, 7 years, and then all of a sudden they say, I can't do this anymore. Because we have to understand that the shame and the guilt around being not straight
Mm.
is a relational wound. It
Mm.
is a wound that is given to people that are not straight by society, by their families, by their religious institutions, by friends. And so a lot of time people get very wounded in the coming out process, and which is, if we take it to the next level, which is so ridiculous. Like, why do you care who I go home to at night?
Yeah.
Just think about it in those terms. Like my wife and I mean, like we have a very boring little life with our two dogs. We're not hurting anybody, so why is that so offensive? But okay, so the wound is relational. The wound is relational.
Yeah.
So I am a very firm believer that wounds that are relational get healed in community.
Mm.
So everything that I have built is built around community. And like every entrepreneur, it has taken me, several years to refine what I do.
Yeah.
So, the first level of support I offer is called Authentically Us. It is a community on Mighty Networks, and it's for women who are questioning their sexuality. What is wonderful about that community is that they not only get myself as a supportive person, they get a co-coach of mine that is in there, and they also get the community. So all of a sudden, like I've experienced with that Facebook group, they get other people that are going through the same
Mm.
thing at the same time. And then the next level of support I offer, and I offer a cohort 3 years, 3 times a year. I have one coming up in May, and that cohort is called This Authentic Life. That is a group of women that start all together. It is very important for them to start all together because they tell their story once, and then we get to work. In my Authentically Us offering, a lot of times I have to catch people up all the time. So you have to sort of retell your
Mm.
story over and over again and stuff like that. So we tell our story once and then we get to work. I built a course, and the course is called This Authentic Life, and it is a community course. And I also have a self study course with that. And in that course, we go through why this is so hard.
Mm.
So we start with internalized homophobia. We start with conditioning, which you just mentioned. We start with the brain. Our brains have to catch up to what we are experiencing because whenever we are going through deep transformation, whether it's around your sexuality or anything else, our brains have to create new neural pathways for
Yes.
us to be able to accept who we are. And
Yeah.
then the last thing we deal with is something called compulsory heterosexuality. And if you do not live in the queer world, compulsory heterosexuality means everybody is assumed to be straight and conditioned to be straight unless proven otherwise.
Mm.
So those where we start. And then we start with the nervous system. When we are making incredible changes in our life, our nervous system really, really plays a role in that. And so, like learning to calm our nervous system through meditation, mindfulness. And then we start working on like having those hard conversations. Um, some of the practicalities around divorce. A lot of times women come to me for questioning their sexuality. And yes, we do all that work, but I also help a lot of women get divorced. And
Mm.
I know a lot about divorce. And my first piece of advice for anybody who's thinking about divorce, go talk to the person in your country or your state because every state and country has different rules. So find out what the rules are before you make any decisions about your life. And then my next level of helping people is called alongside. So basically, they get the cohort that I just talked about, they get the community I just talked about, and then I work with them individually, one on one. And they over 10 sessions. So it is a very, very accompanied program for people who are walking this journey. That's how I work.
Amazing, Anne-Marie. I think there is so much for people to be a part of, which is wonderful.
Well, Stephanie, one of my concerns was affordability.
Yeah.
So I have like you can listen to my podcast, get all my downloads, do everything for free, which
Mm,
was always a big because I know a lot of women. I am very fortunate. I am a well-educated woman. I'm able to like make income and stuff like that. But not a lot of women, not all women have those experiences.
yeah.
And they're getting divorced from somebody who's horrible and who's reholding stuff, and they have no finances to be able to do this. So it was really important to me to I go from free to $39 a month, and they keep going up and up. And it's really I always say that the people that pay me the most support my work for the people that can't pay. So it is a
Mm,
very, it's a very like, if you have the resources that you can pay me to work with me one on one, then you give me the ability to provide free resources for all the
yeah.
women who
Yeah.
cannot. Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing.
Hmm. Hmm.
Anne-Marie, so let's go down this rabbit hole. Why in this day and age is it still such a shock when women come out as lesbian in mid-age?
Well, I think it's less of a shock than it used to be. I think, in fact, I hear people saying it's cliche now for a woman to leave a man for a woman. And I'm like, okay, no, that's not true. But I've seen that on social media. Um, I think there's a lot of things going on. First, the religious piece, of course. The religious piece is, people who come from very conservative faith traditions. It doesn't matter across the board. There is prejudice and a misunderstanding of what it is to be LGBTQ.
Yeah.
So there's that. For women who are coming out later in life, in particular, and particularly those who are married, there is still so much shame, meaning there's something wrong with me that I want a divorce, and guilt. Oh my God, I'm going to F up my kids' lives if I get divorced. Um, and I think the cultural narrative out there is still that women sacrifice their happiness for their
Right.
husbands, their families, their children, and
Mm,
everything else.
mm,
Now, conservative faith traditions teach women that from day one, that you are in the really conservative faith traditions, it's God, husband, children, wife. But it's actually, no, that's not actually right. It's, you know, theoretically, it's God, husband, woman, right? God, husband, wife. But the thing is that these women like have been trained from childhood to put themselves last.
mm.
And so whether they are religious or not, that is in the zeitgeist.
Yeah.
And so when we want something different than what we're told that we should want, that causes a lot of anxiety and confusion for for the woman.
Mm,
I was a woman, Stephanie, that checked all the boxes. I had, I was married to a wealthy man. I had, four beautiful children. I lived in a small town. I was pastor of two churches in that town. I mean, like, I had checked all the boxes. I was, I'm an overachiever, and I wasn't happy. And then, when women say that a lot of times, they we're told to be grateful for what we have.
absolutely. Yeah. We're
Yeah.
crazy or we have to be grateful. Yeah.
Yeah, we have to be grateful for what we have. But when you're somebody, whether it's your queerness or not, because this applies to everybody across the board, when there is something missing in your life, when you know in your soul that there is something missing in your life, or a question that you can't seem to answer, you need to go and explore that
Mm,
because authentic people, people who really accept who they are and are so comfortable in how they have chosen to live their lives, they make the world a better place,
Yeah,
you know? Hmm.
definitely. Definitely. And isn't that the ultimate life journey to find connection to ourselves and others and do that
I think
authentically?
that's our life's purpose,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And a lot of I've also found that 50s, 60s, 70s is a time of blooming for women
Mm,
because we finally have the space because once our children get older, I mean there are the brave ones that do that in their 20s, 30s and 40s, believe me, with little kids and all that stuff like that. But for a lot of women, we wait until our 50s, 60s and 70s because it's the first time we have time to think about ourselves.
yeah. Or have to think about ourselves. We're sort of
Or help to sing it. Yeah.
sometimes,
Sometimes, yeah, we get divorced. Sometimes we want it, sometimes we don't. And like, okay, who am I if I'm not a married woman to Mr. X? So it is actually like it's so funny because in the greater zeitgeist, it's like, oh, we're old ladies, we're worthless, there's nothing that we can offer the world because we can't produce children anymore. But it's such bullshit because this is the time of your life that you can bloom and do anything you want.
mm,
Hmm.
absolutely. Anne-Marie, so how did you navigate this transition with your children? What advice can you pass on?
Okay, first thing I'd like to say is that a lot of times we think of our children as a unit. But our kids react to major life transitions depending on their personalities.
Yeah.
So each child, I have four, each child reacted to this really based on who they were as human beings.
Mm,
Sometimes kids, I find, so if you are making a major life change and your children are under 10, congratulations. Because when kids are young like that, they just want to make sure that you're going to love them and your co-parent is going to love them and keep them safe and keep them warm and that they're going to be okay.
mm,
Anything you tell them about your life, even if you come out as gay, it's simply like is like, Mommy, you gonna have a boyfriend again? It can be simple as this. No, I think Mommy's gonna have a girlfriend this time. That's it. You do not have to go into deep
yeah.
conversations with your littles.
Yeah.
Bigger children, older children, I always say between 10 and 35. um, you know, it's a lot. And unfortunately, moms get blamed when they get divorced. Whether whether you're getting, it's across the board. Like my
Mm,
therapist said to me once, Emery, you need to start a program for women who are just getting divorced and their kids are angry at them. They were the mother that did everything and now they're all like siding with dad and stuff like that. Um, but the thing is that because of the cultural conditioning that we have and our children have, a lot of times women get blamed for a lot of things. And I just find that with my kids, and all four of them reacted differently. My youngest and oldest were fine. It was my two middles that had more of a hard time with this.
mm,
Um, but I know why now because of who they are as people, and also neither one of them likes change very much. So it was just hard for them.
yeah.
It's all, I feel like even when our kids are pissed at us, just keep showing up. Even if like you are, they're not talking to you, you can still send a text, I love you, I'm thinking of you today.
Yeah.
You know, it's okay for our kids to be pissed at us for a while. It's all right for them. You have to understand that we have to understand that someone's reaction doesn't mean rejection.
Mm,
Because when people are allowed to react, our children are allowed to react, and people react all kinds of ways to difficult news. But just because they're reacting doesn't mean they're rejecting us. And women in particular are so terrified of hurting people that they will deny their truth or what they want because they're worried so much about other people's feelings.
Yeah.
And I always say that, except for our children, that's those people's responsibility to deal with their feelings. It's not ours.
Definitely.
Our kids, we need to help them. We need to give them, if they're really struggling with something, we if we can find somebody for them to
Mm,
talk to their school and tell them what's going on, so that if you do not have the resources to, get a therapist for your child, or your insurance doesn't cover it, talk to the school and let them know that they're going through a big transition. And at least the people at school, like the counselors at school, can give them the support.
yeah. Anne-Marie, so what advice do you give to people on life transitions in general?
Buckle up. Life transitions, okay, anybody who tells you you can do a major life transition in 6 months is lying to you,
Yeah, yeah.
um, because you can't. Um, Major life transitions are often accompanied by a lot of grief.
Mm,
And grief is our emotional, physical, intellectual, and spiritual response to loss.
yeah.
So, when we are having any major life transition, there will be a lot of grief in the process.
Mm,
There will be a lot of joy, but there will be a lot of grief. And I do think that going through a major life transition, whatever it is, teaches us about how to hold many complicated emotions at once.
yeah.
So, for example, for myself, when I came out, um, I was, grieving my identity, who I had,
Mm,
this identity I had created over the years. I was grieving my divorce, even though I'm the one who, this is a really big thing for anybody listening. Even if somebody initiates a divorce, doesn't mean they're like running around jumping for joy.
no,
Oftentimes, there's a lot of sadness with that.
yeah.
And by the way, 80% of all women initiate divorce, and it's 90% if they're college educated. So there's something to be studied there.
Well,
So, you know, um, you know, I was grieving my divorce. I was grieving how my relationships with my children changed. I was grieving the future I was going to have. Like the future you imagined for yourself as you grow older. So, if we let ourselves embrace the grief and also embrace the joy, like
mm,
I was falling in love for the first time, for my sexual orientation. I had never had that experience before. So I was having all this joy and excitement and all this loss and grief. And a lot of times, big transitions, those things accompany big transitions. And so, just giving your safe, I believe in three things: giving yourself fierce self compassion.
mm,
When that voice in your head says, you should be, you must, tell that voice to be quiet. I love to tell my clients, name the voice, because you know the voice. And like I had a client that once named the voice Frank because frankly she didn't give a damn. And so like you can be creative with that voice. I also believe in shared common humanity. So finding a community of, if you are going through a major life transition, find a community of people who can support you. That is incredibly important because we human beings are relational people, and we are not supposed to go through things are by ourselves.
no.
So for example, in my days as a grief counselor, when a bunch of widows and widowers would get together and get support around losing their spouse, things changed for them. They felt
Mm,
so not alone.
yeah.
And then they also think I'm a really big believer in the practice of meditation and mindfulness. So that works for me. It may not work for you. Add a spiritual practice to your life,
Mm.
whatever it may be. Sometimes for some people, it's getting on a kayaking and paddling around a river and a pond. But whatever feeds your spirit during this time, it is really important to feed your spirit as we go through major life transitions.
I love that. What feeds your spirit? Pretty hard
Yeah.
to, pretty hard for us even to know that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think especially those of people who have like left religion and like I am not spiritual, but yeah, we're all like called. What I mean by spirituality, where when you go someplace or are with somebody or are doing a practice where your inner knowing, your heart, your soul, whatever you want to call it, feels at peace, but feels connected to something greater than itself.
Mm,
So a lot of people find that in nature.
yeah.
And so it doesn't have, I'm not talking about finding a higher power or anything. I am talking about caring for your spirit because it's just as important as our emotional self and our physical self and our intellectual self. We need to feed our spirit.
Yeah. It's those moments where you feel you are in your body and everything is fine.
Perfect. That's a
Yeah.
great description. Thank
Yeah.
you, Stephanie.
So, Anne-Marie, part of this is that we obviously need to change those conditionings, right? Those stories and narratives that we grow up with that perpetuate from one generation to the next. So, what advice would you have for young people to be more inclusive so that we change those narratives that we still hold?
I think they're already doing that. Um, I find that Gen Z and the one after, which I don't, what is that generation called? Do you
I
know? Gen Alpha, maybe?
Alpha, I think. I think is
Yeah, I
it
don't know.
2010 and then below is
Yeah, Gen Z.
Gen Z. Yeah.
Yeah, and then somebody who's got I think it's Gen Alpha. Um, because my grandson is the next generation, whatever. He was born in 2025, so he's the next
So
generation. So
yeah.
I don't I don't know what that is. Um, I think it's already changing. I think that, especially around queerness, the Gen Z generation is at 30% that
Mm,
identify as LGBTQ.
mm,
Are they all gay and lesbian? Probably not.
mm.
But at least they get to explore.
Yeah.
And there's no, and what changes, what, how things change is visibility. Seeing other people that accept and celebrate the
Mm,
differences.
yeah.
Um, I think one of the reasons, Stephanie, that we've been sliding backwards these days is because the people that are in leadership, especially in my country, represent something that is so I can't say it,
Loathsome.
loathsome. I
Yes.
can't
I
say
mean,
it. It's so
abhorrent.
loathsome and abhorrent and disgusting. And unfortunately, like, I think that the people that don't give this stuff don't give what's the word, actualization, a lot
Yeah.
of thought. They just follow they think, oh, this is okay.
Mm,
I can be disgusting, I can be dismissive of women, I can be. And so what is really important is for us to have, which my country used to, have leaders that exemplify the type of world we want to live in.
yeah.
That
That
is really
stand for
important.
humanity, not against.
And not only in the national elections, like in the places that in the small town works, and the person that's the commissioner of the schools, I mean, things like that. I think that we have to be really thoughtful of who we put in charge.
Mhm.
And we have to understand that even though we see things being a certain way, there are other ways to do things.
Yeah.
I do think that women tend to be more collaborative,
Mm.
and not all, because I recently got trolled by a woman from the religious right, and she was not collaborative.
No.
But I think women, we tend to be more collaborative, and we think about the community. Most of the times it's a bell, there are people that are not like that, but people like you and I, we think about the greater good. Like we don't only make decisions for ourselves,
Yeah.
we think about what will be best for the community around me.
Yeah.
And if you are a woman who serves a community and the community I serve, and so I think that having more women in charge would be a good thing. Elect
Definitely.
women.
Yeah.
Elect women. Elect
Vote
elect
mama. I have
progressive.
so many amazing women on WECAN that do exactly that.
Yeah, I elect women that are progressive or in the middle of the road. It's
Yes.
okay if you're in the middle of the road.
Yeah, yeah,
But yeah,
absolutely.
elect
Reclaiming our
elect
center, so important.
right, and elect pe or follow people that are inclusive and believe in diversity.
Yeah, and share
Because
your
diversity
values.
is yeah, and because diversity is actually what makes beings and the world stronger.
Yeah.
Like as we all know, I'm gonna just dogs that are mutts that have 18 different breeds in them live 20 years, while the ones that are purebred live 10. There's I'm not comparing humans to dog or anything like that, but what I'm trying to say is the more diversity we have inside of us and that we accept, the more we can flourish.
Yeah, definitely. So you said this earlier, someone was trolling you. What are those ongoing challenges for you, Anne-Marie, and how do you reframe them?
Oh, well, okay. So when people troll me, okay, so there was a big in the last couple of weeks there was a I want to try to tell the story as succinctly and quickly as possible. There was a Christian podcast that invited me to be on. I showed up to be on. 10 minutes after I'm sitting there waiting for someone to show up, they tell me that they don't want me on the show because we don't align in values and that being gay is a hot button topic right now. And then they invited me on the other show. I was pretty upset by that because I felt that was very rude. And you don't invite somebody on a show and then 10 minutes
No.
later tell them
Yeah.
they're not. Yeah,
Yeah.
you just don't
That's
do that.
ridiculous.
That's like,
Yeah.
it's not good etiquette. So I was a little angry. And so I called the guy out on social media. Because what he said was very dismissive of my community. A couple of days later, his wife who had like this huge following on social media, which I don't even, honestly, Stephanie, I don't even know their names. So
Mm.
that's, I know this happened, but I don't know who this couple is or anything like that. And she basically said that, called me a reverend lesbian. And she just said I was a wicked I'm a wicked woman and that I lead people astray, and then did what they're known as the clopper passages. There's 7 passages in the Bible that people who believe that they're right say to queer people all the time. If you're someone who's gay, you have probably experienced them. um and then all of a sudden their followers were sending me all kinds of awful messages, posting on my posts, emailing me, calling me an abomination, calling me an evil woman, calling me just all kinds of awful things. And so then I had to spend my time like deleting those things. And they're
Mm.
like, you're deleting us. You're a coward. No, I'm protecting the women I work with
Yeah.
because this is how I view this. Um, it still does hurt me. I'm a human being, and having people tell those things to me, even though I've done tremendous amount of work and I'm able to stand in that and not get super triggered, I'm a person. And
Yeah.
it hurts to be called an abomination 18 times in one day. It just
Absolutely.
does. I'm
Yeah.
not, and I also don't believe I am, but it's still, I'm human. But this is the thing, is that I stand with the women who have been conditioned since childhood that that's okay. And so my response to them wasn't about me. I said, I don't want to address any of the things because it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. But if you're somebody who's had to deal with this, I see you
Mm.
and I understand.
Yeah.
So, you know, it also opened up a lot of times when these things happen, it opens up an opportunity for you. So I ended up writing a piece for the Advocate, which is the largest LGBTQ newspaper in the United States. And so I have an opinion piece in there, and where I'll send it to you, Stephanie, so you can attach it to the show
I
notes.
love that.
But
Yeah.
yeah, in which I write about, you know, so many times when I work with women, I have to get through the church stuff or the conditioning stuff about
Mm,
what it means to be a woman
mm,
and what it means to give up ourselves and all our needs to serve other people before I can even get to the gay stuff.
yeah.
Because women feel enormous shame and enormous guilt around those things. And can you imagine being in a community like that, knowing that you're not like everybody else, but it's the only thing you've known?
Mm,
So you don't realize that there's another way to do this.
yeah.
And you're not an abomination. These are people being very cruel to you.
Yeah.
My wife says there's no hate like Christian love. And
Mm,
and those are people that say that they're being loving, but they're really being abusive and harassing.
yeah.
So
And we
it's
see
over
this
with now.
playing out on the big political,
Hmm.
arena right now, don't we? I mean, it's the president of the United States against the Pope. I mean, it's absolutely
It's
crazy, the
insane.
situation that we seem to be in at the moment. But
Well, but can I say something
yeah.
about that really quickly? Oftentimes, oftentimes, we don't realize that sunsets are actually sunrises. I think that the world has to see, like, this is the nth degree of male narcissistic behavior. He is the nth degree. I mean, he is worse than any man, I think, that I've seen. And I think that it has to get so ugly for even people that don't really pay attention to this stuff and keep their heads down in their own lives, look up and say, wait a minute, this is wrong.
Yeah.
I think that's important. So
Yeah.
I think that it's all burning down right now, and hopefully we will get to a better place.
Yeah, we will. Anne-Marie, what does success look like for you now?
I've been working on that a lot, because I come from a capitalist country. So, success used to be, it would include financial wealth and stuff like that, but it doesn't include that for me anymore. I mean, yeah, of course, making money is you need to live, but for me, success is peace and connection in the relationships that I care about the most.
Mm, beautiful.
And success is this is the thing, Stephanie. I remember I told you about checking the boxes,
Yeah.
and I always was so restless in there. Even now, 10 years after coming out, I am so amazed that I am so happy and peaceful in my life. I'm getting trolled by people on the internet. But I'm married to somebody who adores me, who is my number one fan, who is my partner in life. My children are all well. They're doing really thriving. Um, and I'm still amazed, even now that I'm living a countercultural life, that I'm so much happier than when I was living a more traditional life.
Yeah.
And that blows my mind.
Mm, yeah.
Blows my mind. So that tells me that I am aligned, and I'm aligned with what the universe wants for me. And there is what people say, especially those from conservative traditions, that this is sinful. So for me, sin to me is what separates us from the divine, or our true nature. That to me is my definition of sin. I have never been happier or more aligned in my life.
Mm.
And that is where I am right now. So I am so much more closer to the divine, or whatever we want to call the energy of the universe, than I ever, and I was a minister, than I've ever been in my life. And there is a reason, is because I am living aligned to who I am and to my true nature.
Yeah, which is magical.
Mhm. It is
Anne-Marie,
magical.
so if we had to sum up your story, what takeaways do you want to leave the listeners with?
It's never too late to be happy. You can change your life. It will be scary, but you will come out at the other side. Find your people. Find the people that are aligned with you. If you're looking around your friend group, and this is especially to the young mommies, that sometimes we make friends because we're friends with the kids' parents, find people that you really jive with and that are so much more to you than that they're the mother of, your son's best friend. Find people that really make you sing.
Yeah,
And we all have that.
yeah,
There are people that we all can fit in with. And just because we're on the like married, raising children track, those people may not be your people. And I'm not talking about queerness. I'm just talking about finding the people, the shared common humanity with the people that make your heart feel peaceful and make it sing.
yeah. What a beautiful way to finish. Anne-Marie Zanzal, anyone who's listening, look out This Authentic Life or Authentically Us. And thank you for leading so powerfully on WECAN today.
Thank you, Stephanie.